Local presentation of Read About It is made possible in part by a grant from Cox Communications of Oklahoma City, proud sponsor of this effort to promote reading, education, and literacy in our community.
Poetry will be the topic on Read About It tonight. Hi, I'm BJ Williams. Leah Taylor will tell us about her book, Interiors, a Meditation. Susie Beasley will talk with Ruby Soutier. Kids Corner will feature Rosemary Zarsky. We also have Doug Benton, Evelyn Davis, and Karen Fight. Coming up, Leah Taylor.
The following public service program is brought to you by the Metropolitan Library System. And now, Read About It, with your host, BJ Williams.
The Oklahoma Book Awards banquet this year was really quite entertaining. A number of finalists for all of the awards were there. I was able to talk with some of them, and one of them was Leah Taylor, who wrote a book, Interiors, a Meditation. The photographer for this book was Robin Smith. And Leah told me in the interview, which you will see shortly, that she worked very closely with her photographer on this book. Leah is an Oklahoman, and I think you will enjoy what she has to say about writing poetry here in Oklahoma. What inspired you to write this book?
I've been writing poetry all my life. And a few years ago, I decided that I really needed to find a poetic style that really fit me, that particular voice I think that all artists look for, that's peculiarly theirs. And I began writing in this particular style that's in the book. I hadn't really thought that much about publishing at that time, but a little less than 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And when I told my husband about the diagnosis, and he was the first one that I told, the first words that came out of my mouth, because of course you go immediately from diagnosis to death, you know, you think that you're going to die with that kind of a diagnosis. The first words were, please make sure that my poems get published. And I decided at that point I better pay attention to something that came so spontaneously from me at a very critical time in my life. And I began to work on the book very diligently at that point with Robin Smith, who was a photographer that I had met some months before. And we had talked some about putting a book together, but got very, very serious at that point.
Well, what was it like working with a photographer? You deal in words, she deals in pictures.
Well, basically, what I had always thought when I decided to publish a book was that I would like a photographer to be my illustrator, because I think the art of photography, which is so visual, matches the imagery that we use as poets, which indeed is also visual. You know, we're always trying to use particular artifacts in poetry to evoke the different senses. The ones that I use in my poetry are particularly visual, and I thought that it would lend itself to a photographic image. And when we both met each other, we weren't sure that it was going to work, but we took a leap of faith because we liked each other so well. And in the process, it caused us both, I think, to stretch artistically. She moved in some different directions in terms of her photography becoming more dynamic, and I moved in some different directions in terms of having my imagery be especially visual, I think.
Well, did you sit down together and say, well, I'm going to write a poem on this theme, and Robin said, well, I'll do photographs on the same theme? Or
no, actually, I wrote the poems, and she looked at the poems, and she looked around for images that she thought might fit the poetry. Now, we are working on a second book, and we've decided that it can go the other way. that she can show me some photographs, and perhaps I can write a poem about her photography.
That will be very interesting to see how
Yes.
that comes out.
Yes.
Now, in Interiors, a meditation, there is also a narrative that runs through there. Did the two of you work on that together?
We didn't work on it so much as we decided together that we needed more than just the photographs and the poems to make the book whole. My concern was that there were many people who would not understand the poems or would not be particularly interested in the poems, but would definitely understand the poetic narrative should they read it. And so I wanted to do a poetic narrative which introduced the themes in each cluster of poems, so that those individuals that don't always understand poetry could still benefit from looking at the narrative and the photographs. What we wanted to do more than anything was to be able to reach as many people as we could with the themes in this book. And so we tried to do everything that we could think of to maximize that possibility.
Well, and they might actually be tempted to read some of the poetry and find out that that can be enjoyed.
I hope so. I hope so, because it's my love. The poetry is my love.
And I think it's unfortunate that so many people in this country are intimidated by poetry, when I suspect it was poetry came long before novels and that sort of thing. When
Oh,
you think
yes.
of the Iliad and the Epic of Gilgamesh, those are poetry.
Yes.
And children, when they're playing, start making up rhymes. So
That's true.
maybe people will pick this up and say, "Oh, look at the pictures. That's not bad. I understand that." Oh, now you had a number of themes, as you commented in there, and I just wrote down a couple of them that struck me particularly. One was on healing, I believe, and I'm assuming that that had a great deal to do with what you were going through while you were creating that.
Yes. I had written a couple of poems about healers prior to my diagnosis. I am a therapist, and I do know that the therapy is a healing art. I'm a family therapist. And I had known a couple of individuals that I thought were really healers, that they went beyond technique and into the spiritual side of healing. But I think that when I thought about healers, I thought about the many, many things that we use to heal ourselves. And they're so universal. Music, art, friendship, relationships, the power of faith. All of them are healers, and they're good medicine. In fact, when I was going through my treatments, I frequently thought about the healing art of writing and creativity as being as powerful as chemotherapy.
And the other one that I was particularly struck with was balance. We have just a brief time at that, but if you'd like to comment on that
On
section.
balance.
Mhm.
Balance is interesting because it seems like we're always striving for balance. What I was saying in that particular narrative and in the poems that followed was that we're never ever really in balance, that the world is a very dynamic place and we are very dynamic as part of that world. And so it may seem that we're in balance at some point, but we eventually move on to another state.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you very much. We're out of time, or we would get to more of it, but thank you, and I hope you're back when your next book comes out.
Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
This must be the year for World War I books. There are two major books out now that discuss the American part of World War II and its importance to the Allies. In fact, both of them, in essence, say that without us, they might well have lost the war to the Germans. And recently, I reviewed a book about camel drivers, which were Americans flying in the British war effort. They were flying Sopwith camels, which is why they were called camel drivers. And I have 3 more books now about the air war in World War I. They are broken down into the various countries' efforts. Above Flanders Field, a complete record of the Belgian fighter pilots and their units during the Great War, 1914-18. German Knights of the Air, 1914-18, holders of the Order pour le Mérite, and the Storks, the story of France's elite fighter Groupe de Combat 12 in World War I. Now, Above Flanders Field was compiled by Walter M. Pieter and includes a brief history of Belgian flying units, but its main thrust is the biographies of the 78 Belgians who were fighter pilots. Yes, that was the entire contribution of Belgium to fighter pilots, was 78. And this book takes a brief look at each one of them. It's quite interesting to see the varied backgrounds that they come from. A number of them were from the aristocracy, but there were people from the middle class as well who ended up flying planes in World War I. Pieter goes on to tell us a little bit about their lives after the war, at least for those who survived. Now, the next one is German Knights of the Air. It's by Terry Treadwell and Alan Wood, a couple of Englishmen who specialize in writing about World War I. And this concentrates specifically on those German pilots who won the Pour le Mérite, which most of us know better and are more able to pronounce, the Blue Max. Anybody who's watched Peanuts knows that Baron von Richthofen was the most dreaded German air ace in the world, and he did win the Blue Max. A few more of us are familiar with the fact that Reichsmarschall Goering also held the Blue Max. But this takes a look at all 81 fighter pilots who were given that award, gives a little background for them, and a story about what happened to them after the war. Now, there was one who actually had his name erased from the tablet in Berlin that listed all 81 of them. This happened once the Nazis took power because he was a Jew. His name was restored after the war. The Storks takes a look at an elite French group. It was composed of a number of escadrilles and actually was sent to wherever the ground fighting was the worst in order to defend, to get rid of German observation planes. This concentrates more on the actions of the fighting unit and not so much on the individuals that were engaged in it. My last book is on an entirely different subject. It's by C. Warren Hollister, and it is a biography of Henry I. Anybody who studied medieval history has read at least one book by Hollister. This is his last. It was actually completed shortly after his death by one of his dearest friends. It is sort of a revisionist biography. Most people who know anything about Henry I think of him as brutal and greedy. As a son of William the Conqueror, he somehow ended up being both King of England and Duke of Normandy. And he had actually a very enlightened reign. He was a very unusual person for his time in that he believed in law and order. He did everything he could to strengthen the judicial and the financial institutions of the royal government of England and also that of the Duke of Normandy. The accomplishments that his son Henry II made were based on what Henry I had done originally. If you're interested in English history, I think you'll enjoy it. Coming up next, we have Kids Corner. Rosemary Zarsky has another book for our young adults. Rosemary, what have you brought for us tonight?
I brought The Barn Burner by Patricia Willis.
And this is set in what period?
It's set in Depression America during the 30s. And Ross is a young 14-year-old who leaves home because he thinks his mother hates him. And his father thinks he's a thief. Neither situation is true, but you know how
kids are. Yeah, they don't love me, I'm leaving.
and he was truly hurt by what his mother had said, and his mother had truly only said it to protect him, to get him away from his father until his father could cool down. But he's on the road, and he sleeps in barns and in railroad cars and whatever, and he sleeps in a barn and wakes up to the smell of smoke. He gets out of the barn and he gets some horses out of the barn. But in the process, he's there long enough for the owner of the barn to see him and think he did it.
Oh dear, so he's really in more trouble than he knows what to do with.
That's right. And of course, his first thought is, I'm not local, I better get out of here. He can't get out of there though, because he meets a family that needs help really, really bad, and it's the kind of help he can give. And so he stays with them thinking, well, I'm far enough away from the mainstream, nobody will notice. But of course, that's not true either.
Right.
And he meets a man, he goes to work in the clay pits, and he meets a man who helps him do his job, helps him so many ways. But this man is very bitter, very, very bitter. And you have to read the story to find out why and how he acts out his bitterness. But for Ross, it's truly a coming-of-age novel, because he learns that some people feel so desperate they'll do anything.
And in the end, now, does he reconcile with his own family?
He's on his way back to his family to reconcile, knowing that he will really have two families, the family he helped and his own family, once he gets back and makes peace with his family.
Mm-hmm. And so he's prepared to do that.
And he is strolling back, not hurrying, mind you, but strolling back. And because he's come to understand what his mother actually was trying to do when she told him to get out of their sight.
And the title and author again?
The Barn Burner by Patricia Willis.
Thanks, Rosemary. And remember, you can find this book at your library and your favorite bookstore. Coming up next, Susie Beasley will talk with Ruby Suchiera about a book I think you'll enjoy.
Ruby, tell us about The Devil's Cure by Kenneth Oppen.
The Devil's Cure is a suspense thriller type book, and it has three main characters. Of course, it has a villain. His name is David Haynes. He is a death row inmate. He is there because he has been killing physicians because he feels that they are the devil's disciples, and they are evil and horrible. Then we have Laura Donaldson, who is a physician and cancer researcher. She is almost obsessed with finding a cure for cancer because her sister has cancer. And then we have Kevin Sheldrake, who is the FBI agent who caught David Haynes the first time and put him behind bars.
Okay.
And what happens, the story opens with David Haynes being forced to have a blood test. He feels that it's bad to ever let a doctor have your blood, but they force him, they tie him down because he's in prison, and they take his blood for a routine blood test. And Laura Donaldson finds out that something in his blood has the ability to kill cancer cells, totally annihilate cancer cells. So of course she wants his blood so that she can do
Her cancer
research and try to figure out what in his blood causes it to do this so that she can replicate it and cure cancer, especially her sister's cancer. And so when he refuses, of course, to give her blood, she gets a court order to force him to give her 2 units of blood and some of his bone marrow for her research. And she works for a big corporation doing the cancer research, and she, with her company, rents a mobile medical unit and goes to the prison, and they bring him on board this RV that's all fitted out with the latest medical equipment, and of course he escapes.
That's right. So there the adventure starts. So why this title, The Devil's Cure?
Well, the Devil's Cure is what David Haynes calls his blood. He says that his blood, if he gives his blood and they use it to cure cancer, that it will be of the devil. And one of the little twists in this book is the fact that David Haynes was a former cult member, as was Kevin Sheldrake, the FBI agent. They were different cults.
Cult members.
But
So
they
you
were
have a
both-
lot of twists and turns, this edge of the seat type mystery,
It is.
suspense.
It is really
Well, we
good.
really appreciate you coming and sharing with us, Ruby, The Devil's Cure by Kenneth Opel. And this is available at your local bookstore and your local library. And thank you. We'll see you.
Thanks, Susie and Ruby. It's time now for the New York Times bestseller list. We'll start out as usual with hardback fiction. Number 10 on that list is Rise to Rebellion by Jeff Shara, The Wind Done Gone by Alice Randall, A Traitor to Memory by Elizabeth George, The Jury by Steve Martini, 7 Up by Janet Ivanovich, P is for Peril by Sue Grafton, Leap of Faith by Danielle Steele, Cane River by Lolita Tademi. Number 2 is Any Way the Wind Blows by E. Lynn Harris, and number 1 is John Irving's The Fourth Hand. On the nonfiction list, number 10 is Tuesdays with Morrie by Mitch Albom, The Noonday Demon by Andrew Solomon, Supreme Injustice by Alan Dershowitz, Napalm and Silly Putty by George Carlin, Justice by Dominic Doon, The Truth Is by Melissa Etheridge with Laura Morton, Founding Brothers by Joseph Ellis, Ghost Soldiers by Hampton Sides. Number 2 is Stolen Lies by Malika Ofikir and Michelle Fitoussi, and number 1 is David McCullough's John Adams. On the children's list, number 10 is The Captain Underpants Extra Crunchy Book of Fun by Dav Pilkey, Sure Thing by Judy Katschke, The Princess Diaries by Meg Cabot, Junie B. Jones is a Graduation Girl by Barbara Park, The Case of the Dog Camp Mystery by Judy Katschke, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone by J.K. Rowling, The Prayer of Jabez for Teens by Bruce Wilkinson with David Kopp, The Bad Beginning by Lemony Snicket. Number 2 is Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire by J.K. Rowling, and number 1 is Rowling's Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Coming up next, we have Doug Benton from the Metropolitan Library System and the Oklahoma Gazette. He'll be talking with Evelyn Davis, also from the library system, about a book that Evelyn really enjoyed.
Thanks. Hello again, everybody. My new partner in crime today is Evelyn Davis. You've seen her many times before on the program, but we've never talked together before on the program. So hi, how are you, Evelyn?
I'm fine, Doug.
You're fine. Okay. You have a book by Stephen King today, one of his newer books, right?
Yes.
Okay. It's kind of two books in one in a way, isn't it? Because it's partially advice to the writer, and it's a memoir as well, right?
That is correct. He bookends it as in a way with a description of his early life and his marriage, and then his near-fatal accident with the fool who was driving the blue van with the Rottweiler in it. And he began writing this book, this first nonfiction book in many years, really as therapy to see after the accident if he could even write. And he was terrified that he would not be able to write again. And he also had a real desire to write a book on the craft of writing, not only how he did it, but for other aspiring writers.
The advice in there is pretty good, as I remember it.
It's excellent advice, and one of the points that sticks in my mind is do the first draft totally alone behind closed doors. Do the second draft for people you truly trust, a select few, and at the top of that list for him was his wife.
Now, he has had some pretty rocky times in his life, I believe, has he?
He has, and in this book he is amazingly candid about his use of alcohol and cocaine. He said, I barely remember writing Cujo, and that was a pretty good book. I wish I'd been there to experience writing it, but I wasn't.
There are rocks on which his life rests, I believe.
There are, and the main foundation of his life, believe it or not, even more than his writing, is his marriage. It appears to be rock solid. She seems to be his best critic and his best friend.
His wife, Tabitha, is also
Yes, she
a
is.
sometime novelist, isn't she?
Yes, she is.
So that would make her a good critic of his work. Yeah, that's interesting. What motivates Stephen King to write? I mean, it can't be money anymore, surely. What is the motivation?
He said he got asked that all the time. And he said, believe it or not, it's not the money, it is the joy. I write for the joy of writing, and that's what drives me, and if it no longer drove me, I would no longer write. And at the conclusion of what I want to say is a man who can write a sentence which appeared in one of his long short stories, which refers to this earth as the cradle of creation and the wellspring of time, is no pulp writer.
Thank you. The book is Stephen King on writing. Evelyn, thanks a lot, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doug and Evelyn. I have with me now Karen Fite from the Oklahoma Department of Libraries, and she is here as usual to tell us about what's on the web. And I understand, Karen, that they're putting the census on the web, right?
Yes, they are. And in fact, July 25th, the very detailed demographics of Oklahoma will be available.
Great. Now, where do we go to get that?
It's at www.census.gov.
Well, that's pretty easy to remember, isn't it? Now, they're just putting the whole thing on the web?
Well, it's coming up gradually, various parts of the 2000 census, which of course everybody's anxious to get the figures from so they could start planning where to put their business or reapportion the legislature. All those things have to come out of it.
Okay. Now, are there other censuses that are available on the web?
The census that most genealogists are interested in is the name part, and that's available from Ancestry.com and some other companies.
Now, that's not a government
That's
site.
not a government site. The federal government has nothing to do with putting the name parts up.
Okay, so all the feds are doing is putting up statistics.
Yeah.
So if you want to know how many people that are of Native American heritage that live in Oklahoma, you can go to census.gov.
Right.
But if you want to know their names,
Then you have to go somewhere else.
you have to go somewhere else. Okay. So, well, would an individual who is not wondering where to put the next McDonald's be particularly interested in this then, the government aspect of it?
Well, I think everybody has to be affected by the population. Of course, in the western part of the state, many of the counties are losing population, so they have to look at that when they're planning, you know, the infrastructure of their government. And schools, etc.
Okay. Now, in the information you gave me earlier, you said something about census cards from the 1930s.
Yes, those will be available in April of 2002, and that's another thing the genealogists are looking forward to. Since the 1930s, a little closer to our time, they'll be able to trace their ancestry.
Okay. Now, are they going to be able to do that on the website, or?
No, that's strictly, again, Ancestry.com or one of those places. We'll probably be putting it up fairly quickly, but that's the first date that it will be available to them to put up.
Okay. Now, you also mentioned something about a website. Now, I'm sorry, not a workshop on the web, but this is not if you're researching your ancestry. This is
Right.
if you're...
This is strictly statistical, and it's being put on by the Oklahoma Department of Commerce. It's August 14th, and if they need further information, they can contact me. It will detail parts of the new census, like the American Community Survey, which are going to give a lot more detailed demographics in the future.
Okay, so actually the census seems to be collecting more and more information. Every time they do it, they've got at least 15 new questions. I thought they used to come by and say, okay, how many are alive here in the house? Thank you very much, Karen, for being with us. And Karen Fite from the Oklahoma Department of Libraries has been telling us about www.census.gov. Be sure and join us again next week.
local presentation of Read About It is made possible in part by a grant from Cox Communications of Oklahoma City, proud sponsor of this effort to promote reading, education, and literacy in our community.